Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video about Python basics. Today we'll be talking about dictionaries. Dictionaries are nothing more than the ability to list organized elements by positions. They also help us organize information by association. Dictionaries would have an actual key, and then they would have an associated value, and we'd be able to associate items by those things. So to get started, we can come in here and we can do a help on dict. And within Python, we already have information about all the functions and really methods made available for dictionaries. If we wanted to look at all the methods that are available for dictionaries, we can do a dir on it, and we see a number of things that are available to us. We'll go ahead and create a dictionary. We'll call it myDict, and I'm going to do open and close squiggly brackets. Those open and close squiggly brackets are a tall tale sign that we're doing a dictionary. So let's just go ahead and lay this out over here so we can kind of recap on a little bit. So we have the open and close squiggly brackets. We have open and close brackets for list. We have the open and close paren for tuples. Right, so a couple of different data sets that we can work with within Python. So if I wasn't for sure of what it was, I could of course always run a type on it, and I would be able to see that it is indeed a dictionary. Now I'm going to start off with my dictionary, and I'm going to go ahead and declare it again, but this time I'm going to put in there a key of Georgia. I'll put in a value of GA, and then that's one pair. I'll put in another one of Alabama, and we'll put in another value, and we'll do one more. We'll call it Florida, and we'll do FL, and then we'll wrap it up. So now when I come in and we actually try to look at the information in there, we have that. All right, so we see three individual items, if you will, within our dictionary. Each one of them has their own value and key. Now, if we just wanted to come out and free willy-nilly just call upon it like so, we see it as well. Now, let's say we want to get in here and we want to get to the point of actually trying to sort it. Well, when I look at built-ins, there is a method called sorted, and we could utilize that to actually sort the items in our dictionary. So I'll do sorted, we'll do myDict, and we're going to sort by values. We'll open and close that, and we'll see what we have going on here. All right. At the core, the converted keys and values will be converted to a list. All right. So we'll look at what we get, if anything. All right, cool. So what we get back are those values sorted. Okay, so now if we go a little bit further with this, we can actually start manipulating this data or presenting it back in the fashion in which we desire. So that's kind of sorting it. Let's look at creating another one. And in this case, I'm going to create one called student. I'm going to come in here and I'll do name. We'll do Bob. We'll do age. We'll do 22. We'll do courses. And we'll store multiple things there. We're going to feed it a list, all right? And that list contains math, and English. So we start to see how versatile this could be for us. And we'll go ahead and close that up. So now when I come in and I print student, I see the key of name, I see the value of Bob, I see the key of age, we see the value of 22, we see the key of courses, and we see the value of a list which contains math and English. Now, if you notice, we have a mixture of data sets within here. All right, so we have a string here, but we have an int there. So we can contain multiple different data sets within our dictionary. Now, if I wanted to see what a particular item was, well, you guessed it. We could definitely do type on it. So we'll do type, we'll do student, and that by itself tells me it's a dictionary. But if I'm curious about a particular item, let's say I want to know about what is age, what this gets us. Well, I got a syntax error here, so let me fix that. I'll copy, we'll paste, we'll get rid of that one, and it tells me that the key age is filled with an int, which it is, right? Because we have 22 there. Now, we can continue on and on with that, and actually, let's do this again, and this time, let's do courses. I'll get rid of my my syntax error there, or fix it rather. And we're doing courses, and it tells us that that is being held with a list, which it is. Math and English are indeed a list. So if we only care to print out the value for a particular thing, well, we can do something like this, where we call upon print, we'll then call upon the actual name, or value rather, or key, excuse me, that we care about, and we'll have that returned to the screen. Now, what happens when we try to call upon a value, or a key rather, that does not exist? Well, you've already kind of guessed that. Python doesn't like that, and it kind of lets us know with a traceback. Now, let's say we want to attempt to do this, but we don't want it to be a terminating error. We want it to return something so we can then filter upon. Well, we could do something like call upon student, and we could use the get method, and when we utilize the get method, we can then specify the very thing that we're attempting to receive. And where that isn't true, we get back not in traceback. In this case, we get back the actual item that exists. We'll do this again, and we'll do names, but instead we get back none. So we can utilize this as part of our error handling, if you will, or really just dealing with the output. So we have a couple of options there. Now, when we utilize the get method, by default, if it doesn't exist, it's going to return none. But if we don't want it to return none, instead we want it to return something else, well, we could then specify what we want it to say. In this case, I'm wanting to say not found. So when it looks for that and recognizes that names does not exist, it's then going to return not found, because that's what I told it to do. If I didn't want it to do not found and I wanted it to say error in all caps, well, it will do that as well. So we have some leisure in that ability. Now, when we look at what's in student right now, we see a number of things. And let's say Bob is really not the person's name. It's really Chris. Well, we could come in here and we could say student, we'll specify the actual key that we want to change, and then we can feed it the value that we want it to be replaced with. So in this case, we'll do Chris, and then when we do print on student, we'll see that Bob has now been replaced with Chris. So not too difficult. Now, let's say we want to add an additional key pair that doesn't already exist. Well, in this case, we'll do student. We'll call upon this new key pair that doesn't exist. In this case for us, we'll do student ID or stu ID, and we're going to specify 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now when we go back in and look at it, well, you've guessed it, that has now been added to it, and we see that at the end. So what we have going on here is Python is looking to see within our dictionary, does this item exist? And if it does, well, then kindly replace it with what we're feeding it. And if the item does not exist, well, kindly create it and then feed it that value. So from our example earlier, we were calling upon student, right? So I'm sorry, not student, names. So let's go back in here. Let's do names. And in this case, we'll do John, all right? So cool. We've now just added names to our dictionary. And we didn't really mean to do that. That was a fudge on our part, but nonetheless, it is now in there. Now, let's say we want to update multiple things, right? Because right now, we're updating them one at a time by doing it like so. But we could also update multiple items at the same time. So we'll do student, we'll do the update method, and then within there, we're going to specify the actual key that we're updating, and then specify the value that we want to in place there. We'll then separate that with a comma. We'll then specify the actual next key and then the value that we want to place there. Or actually, we can make them 24. Does not matter. All right, and then we'll close that up. So now when we go back in and try to print student, we see that Chris is now Larry, 22 is now 24, and we have just updated it as such. Now, let's say that we try to do the same thing, utilize an update, and this time we find ourselves in a place where, well, the very items don't exist. So we'll do something like semester, and we'll say this is 3. We'll then do grad, and we'll specify 2020, right, for when this person's going to graduate. And then we'll close that up, and what we get here is that essentially these things are going to be merged together. They're going to be added on to it. All right, so we see the very things we had before, but we now also see semester of 3 and grad of 2020. So we've essentially appended those items to the end of our dictionary. Now, let's say we want to go back in here and we now want to make sure, or rather, let's say, actually, what do we have? We have student, which we've already said has a number of things in there. We still have my dict, right, which also has a number of things. But let's say we want to add student to my dict, right? Let's do that. So we can do that utilizing the update method, right? And within that update method, we know that we need to supply it something. So we'll supply it another dictionary called student. And now when we go in here and look at my dict, we see all that information in there. We see those states, and then we see the stuff that was in student. But guess what? We were taking the contents of the student dictionary, adding it to my dict, but we were never affecting my dict. I'm sorry, we were never affecting student. So student goes untouched. Now, let's say we get to the point where it's like, hey, age is cool, but we don't want that in there. Well, we have a couple of things we can do. We can do del for delete. That's going to be a keyword. And then we'll do student, and we'll specify the very key that we're getting rid of. And when we do that, we're not only getting rid of the key, but we get rid of the value as well. So age is gone, and so is that value of 24. Now, there was also the ability to utilize pop. And as you recall, pop will remove the item from whatever it is it's in this case, a dictionary, but it will print it to standard out. So we'll remove name, and it prints out what was being held for the value of name, but the name key pair is now gone. All right, and we see it no longer existing there. Now, let's go ahead and try this again. And this time, we'll do pop, we'll do name again. Now, again, name does not exist, or actually, let's do in. And good old tracebacks come in and let us know that it doesn't exist. Just like we did earlier, though, when we were utilizing the get method, we could specify the error. So we can come in here and we can say, hey, doesn't exist. All right, so it tried to pop out the in value, or key rather, and instead of it doing a traceback, we gave it a custom error to report, or custom item to report rather, and that was doesn't exist. So that kind of helps us with some of our error handling and what we're going to do next. If we wanted to know the length of items in there, well, we could absolutely use len. And when we do len, and we get back 5, really what we're getting back is that there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items in there. We're not counting the key and the value. We're just counting how many keys are in there, because for every key, in theory, there would be a value. So, additional to that, we could go in here and we can call upon an item, or we couldn't rather. You may feel like we could go in here and try to do some slicing where we say, hey, I want courses because, hey, courses sits at index 0. And when we do that, it does not work for dictionaries. So what we would need to be able to do is instead, we would print out student, and we would specify keys, and we would get said keys, right? And if we want to get those values, well, same, just slightly different, where now we'll come in here and we'll do values. Okay, now if we want to get all the value, the key and value pairs, well, we find ourselves doing something like this, where we'll do students, and instead of keys, we'll do items, right? And that's going to print back all those key value pairs. We're essentially getting the same thing that we would have gotten here. Now, what if we only want to get the keys, right? Well, we said we can do that here, but we could also do that from a loop. So we can do something like this, where we can do for k in student, I want to print out k. Restarted my shell, right? So I've now lost student. So let's come back in here and I'll grab student again, and I'll just take it from the beginning of sorts, right? And I'll bring this over here and then put this in my loop. So now when we run this, cool. I get the actual keys themselves. So we get name, we get age, we get courses. Okay, now if I wanted to utilize the ability to get them both, well, I can go a little bit deeper. In this case, I'll say, hey, key, and then value within student dot items. So remember earlier, we utilized items and we were able to get the actual key pair back itself. And when I do that, I now want to print out the key and value. So let's run that. Cool. So I get name, and then I get the actual value. I get age, and then I get the value. All right, and I get courses, and then I get the value associated with it there. So that's very helpful. Now, let's make sure that we still have student in here, and we do. Now, when I'm done, I can simply close out my terminal, but if I wanted to do some garbage collection, I could just clear it utilizing the clear method. And when I do that, right, I now have essentially an empty dictionary. Cool. Now, let's say we wanted to do a little bit more, and in this case, we're going to get rid of this. Okay, so we'll just copy and paste in what we have in our buffer, and we've declared a dictionary that has key value pairs that we're going to use for hex to binary. We have a function that we've created here called convert, and that function takes in two arguments. One is number, the other one is table. And what happens is right after that, it declares a variable called binary, and it's going to be an empty string. And then we immediately go into a for loop where we take each number that was supplied to us, store it as digit, and then come in here, take our binary, utilize a table, which is the other item that was supplied to us, and then get the actual digit itself, i.e. listed there, and then store it back, or add that to binary and then store it back as binary and return binary. All right, so let's look at this in action a little bit. Well, I'll call upon this function that we're creating, and what I'm going to supply it off the beginning here is I'm going to supply it a string of 3. And then I'm going to call upon my dictionary, this hex to binary table of sorts, and from here I'll be good to go. So let's run this and see what we get. Okay, well, we see that we did not get anything back. Let's print this out. Okay, cool. So when we fed it 3 and it went through its conversion, well, 3, the key, has a value of 0, 0, 1, 1, which that first value all the way to the right would be 1. That second value, second from the right, would be 2, i.e. 1 and 2 giving us 3. Well, that's awesome. Now we can continue on with this utilizing our dictionary within our function here, and we can just apply it a subset of different characters. So we'll do 5 there, we'll do A there. We'll also come down here and we'll give it a subset of items, so 3, 5, A, and we'll run that and we'll look at what we get. Okay, cool. So it indeed does what we expect it to do. 0, 0, 1, 1 being 3, 0, 1, 0, 1 being 5, 1, 0, 1, 0 being A, and then we see all 3 of those combined for 35A. That's up everything I want to talk about for dictionaries today. By now you can understand and you can really see the powerfulness of this data type, if you will, within Python and its use for it. Join us again on the next video where we dive a little bit deeper within Python basics. Thanks.